The number one attribute that an entrepreneur needs to possess to be successful is resilience. You cannot tolerate being around people that take your energy for too long. When you've built a business and you've worked through the pain of building a business, you build mental toughness. Growth, in a business, which is what we all want, requires you to get out of your comfort zone. Getting out of your comfort zone requires you to be mentally tough. There are 8 traits that I've identified of a top performer. Number 1 is extreme ownership. What I mean by that is you can't have a team that is acting like a bunch of victims, that's entitled, that blames, that denies, makes excuses. When you take extreme ownership, you are responsible for your tasks, your projects, you're responsible for delivering. And if you don't deliver, you take ownership of that. You say, it's my fault, I made the mistake, I didn't get the job done, I underestimated the timeline, I didn't factor in different variables. But extreme ownership means if I put my name on this, it is getting done, and I am responsible for getting it done, and I'm gonna get it done on time, on budget, according to plan. And if I don't, I'm going to communicate, and I'm going to take responsibility. If you have people that are being entitled, that are blaming, that are denying, that are justifying, and that are acting like a bunch of victims, then you will never have a successful, high-performing team. In order to instill a culture of ownership, you have to talk about the subject of ownership. And you have to find anything that you want your team to embody. First, you have to embody it. So if you're not taking ownership, if you're blaming your team, if you're not stepping up and admitting fault and taking responsibility and honoring your commitments, then your team's not going to do the same. Your company is a reflection of who you are. I see a lot of entrepreneurs that they blame their team for everything, and they need to blame themselves. If you want to have a team that's filled with extreme owners, then you have to be an extreme owner. Another way to instill ownership is not only by example, number 1. Number 2 is you have to teach the subject. Number 3 is you have to reprimand when people don't take extreme ownership, and then you have to recognize and reinforce them when they do. To build a culture, it's about what you recognize and what you reprimand. And by reprimand, I mean correct. And you can use conscious principles to correct. You can correct people with kindness. You can call them forward as opposed to call them out. And you can do it in a way that they learn from. But every time there's a behavior within your culture that isn't in alignment with who you aspire to be, you need to correct that behavior. Culture is a set of behaviors that a group is operating with. If the group is not operating with good behavior, then you have to correct the negative behaviors and reinforce the positive ones for the group to learn what behaviors are going to be promoted within the culture. So it's all about behavior. Number 2 is relentless adaptability. When so many people resist change, they're afraid of change, they complain with change, and as your company scales, many people will not be able to scale with it. Think of a company as a series of transactions. You have your revenue, and that's a transaction, every sale, but then there's all the different components to the sale. And so if you have a company doing $1 million a month and your average order value is $100, you might have 5 million transactions when it comes to your supply chain, your accounting, and all the different touch points. Some people are not competent enough and capable of performing in a high transactional environment. So as your business scales, they either scale with it and they adapt with it and they accept the change, or you got to find people who are capable of scaling to that transaction level. I ran a company doing 65 million a month. That was like 10 million transactions that we did a month. So, I had to have people on my team that could process and operate and lead a group that did 10 million transactions a month. The people I started with didn't always adapt and embrace the changes within them and the environment necessary for them to scale to that level. It's about transactions. People think about scaling incorrectly. It's not about revenue, it's about the number of transactions that each environment and each system that the company operates under can hold, and each team member has to scale to match that level of transactional volume. Number 3 is purpose-driven mentality. When times are tough, when you don't have the energy, when you didn't get good sleep, when you miss a deadline, your product fails, the investors pull out, the macroeconomic environment goes through a recession or a policy change, this is when purpose is going to be your guiding light. And if you have a strong purpose, if you're doing this for a deep reason and a reason that is beyond you, you will attract people that will put purpose above themselves. And when you're in an environment where everyone is putting the purpose of the company and the mission of the company above themselves, that's when you can create greatness. So relentless pursuit of purpose and people that are more purposeful and want to create meaning out of their work. If you don't have purpose, you do not do meaningful work. You might be driven to do work out of ego, but it's not going to be as meaningful. And it is the meaningful nature of the work that is going to keep you coming back to it, even when times are difficult. Number 4 is mental toughness. There's been times where, I wasn't mentally tough and I had to find a way to get back up. I had to, face my fears. I had to do the work. I had to overcome my desire to self-sabotage, my desire to quit, my desire to give up, my desire to, throw in the towel. There's many times where one day I thought I cracked the code and I was going to change the world, and the next day I realized that the code I thought I cracked was false, and I had to go back to the drawing board. And so the number 1 attribute that an entrepreneur needs to possess to be successful is resilience. And resilience is earned. You earn it by way of every failure, every setback, every mistake, every error, every letdown. That then becomes your vessel of resilience that you have available to you. And so now when things come my way, I can smile and I can roll with the punches and I can move through them. And if I have a bad day, I remind myself I've been through this before and I'll get through this again. And so resilience is everything. And that's what we talk about when we talk about mental toughness. It's how tough are you? How resilient are you? How willing are you to stand in your convictions? How willing are you to confront conflict? How willing are you to stand in your principles and to lead by principles? That's what mental toughness is. Sometimes you have to give a person a raise. Sometimes you have to cut a person back. Sometimes you have to take a risk. All of that takes mental toughness. One decision at a time, facing one uncomfortable conversation at a time, looking yourself in the mirror and working when you don't want to, having conversations you don't want to, doing work you don't want to. You build resilience by doing things that are not fun, they're not enjoyable, they're painful. When you've built a business and you've worked through the pain of building a business, you build mental toughness. Mental toughness is basically how much pain can I take and still be productive? Because there's a certain amount of pain that makes you totally unproductive. So as I learned to take the pain of being an entrepreneur and building a business and the pain of failure and the pain of loss and regret and letdown, as I learned to take that pain, I become more mentally resilient, and that mental resilience is a toughness that I then apply to the work that I'm doing. And even today though, I have to look myself in the mirror and say, what uncomfortable conversations am I avoiding? What's the next step that I have to take in order for me to build and scale my business? At every level, there's a new devil. And at every level, you have to address uncomfortable things. You have to get out of your comfort zone to scale. Growth, in a business, which is what we all want, requires you to get out of your comfort zone. Getting out of your comfort zone requires you to be mentally tough. It's really easy to be lazy and to be comfortable. It's really hard to do the uncomfortable. Number 5, execution over excuses. Excuses are going to be the hindrance to your ability to scale. There is no excuses. There's only responsibility. One of my mentors, Coach Del Brown, he was a famous basketball player. He bought a book that had 1,000 excuses, and he went over the excuses in practice. And he'd say, there's 1,000 excuses out there. We cannot be a team that makes excuses. High-performing teams do not make excuses. You have to execute over excuses. Excuses are going to be the greatest hindrance to scale. There's always an excuse. A vendor didn't come through. You didn't hire on time. You didn't forecast correctly. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. There's always excuses. People make excuses to let themselves off the hook. You want a team that takes extreme ownership and that is on the hook at all times, and that when times are tough or when they're not hitting their timelines, they're delivering their projects according to their objectives, that they choose to execute as opposed to make excuses. You cannot be a part of a high-performing team that makes excuses. There's only one way to win, and that is to take full ownership and full accountability and full responsibility and to execute. Number 6, you have to surround yourself with people who give you energy versus people who take it from you. Every conversation is an energy exchange. Do you feel depleted at the end of the conversation? Do you feel depleted at the end of the meeting? Do you feel depleted or do you feel energized? You know the difference. If people are showing up, if they're accountable, if they're committed, if they're taking responsibility, they're going to give you energy. And if they're doing excellent work that's inspiring, if they are not, they're going to take your energy. You cannot tolerate being around people that take your energy for too long. You can only build a high-performing team if you have people that give you life as opposed to take the life out of you. Your work environment should give you so much life that when you get home, you have more energy from work as opposed to less energy from it. So you gotta ask yourself, are the people on my team taking my energy or giving me energy? And if they're taking it, you need to correct their course. You need to have a conversation with them and tell them that you have some boundaries and tell them that you have some expectations, and tell them that you want them to perform at a higher level. You want them to take more responsibility, to be more accountable, to be more professional. This is what leadership's about. Anytime someone's taking energy from you is an opportunity for you to step in and be a leader. And if you can't turn them around, then turn them over to someone else to lead them, whether it be in your environment or send them off into the marketplace and let them get a job elsewhere. Number 7, mastery over ego. When people start patting themselves on the back and taking more credit than they should, and the ego is gotten out of control, it'll become a toxic environment. This is the greatest hindrance to a high-performing team. I've been in teams where egos got out of control. It was the demise of the team. Ego is undefeated. So what I focus is people pursue mastery over ego. You have to have people that put the work above themselves and their own self-interest. I look for people that care more about the work than they care about themselves. You want to find people that are going to put the team first and put the mission first, and they're going to pursue self-mastery and are going to pursue business mastery in such a way that the company will exemplify those virtues, and not people that are, pursuing status or significance or, the traits of the ego. Number 8, obsessed with growth. You have to be growing personally and professionally simultaneously in order to grow your business. If you are a leader, your team is going to grow as you grow. So I recommend diving into the books. I recommend taking on different practices. I even recommend taking on hobbies that are going to help you access parts of you that'll help you bring new growth to your team. You need to be growing or you are dying. The more that you grow as a leader, the more that your team will grow. There's 2 categories that we have to be obsessed with. We have to grow in character and grow in competency, and you need to be growing all the time. If you want your company to grow, you have to grow. Grow the leader, grow the team. These are my 8 undeniable traits that I see in every top performing team and every top performing leader. I hope this was helpful to you. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and please share it with your friends.